the start of another work week. It's Monday. Yes, we made one day work for the week already. For those of you who enjoy your job like I do, it was not another day of work, but we just had another day of fun. I'm Odette, Campbell, your presenter on Beyond the Headlines, a weekly current affairs program where we dissect the issues. We go beyond the headlines. This evening, we're going into reflective mode. We know yesterday was Mother's Day. So to all mothers, yesterday we did not get an opportunity to say Happy Mother's Day to you. It's never too late because every day we celebrate our mothers. So to all mothers out there, Happy Mother's Day to you. We have some fathers who play the dual roles. Fathers, Happy Mother's Day if you serve both as mommy and as daddy. This evening we're in reflective mode, like I said, and we'll be looking at a broad range of issues. We'll be pinning this down on women in societal development. I am pleased to present tonight's panelists, and we are going to start in Trinidad and Tobago, where we have a very strong woman who is a mommy herself, Sunity Maharaj, the managing director of the Lloyd-Best Institute of the West Indies, that's the LBIWI, and editor of the Trinidad and Tobago Review. She's a media consultant, journalism lecturer, and head of her own multimedia production company. She is also the former editor-in-chief of the Trinidad Express, former news director at TV6, and group executive for editorial and content development at One Caribbean Media, OCM. Ms. Glynis Roberts, a former parliamentarian. She was the political leader of the National United Front and the first female leader of a political party in Grenada. She was elected to Parliament in 2003 and represented the St. George South constituency for the National Democratic Congress in the House of Representatives. Ms. Roberts has been an outspoken critic of domestic violence and a strong advocate for families and children. Just to let you know, we haven't seen her yet, but we will try to get on to Ms. Roberts a little later on. Ms. Alina Roberts, Grenadian educator who teaches at the primary school level. Mrs. Roberts is also a parent and psychology graduate at St. George's University. She's a very versatile and dynamic educator who uses poetry and creative art forms to strengthen her presentation in the classroom. And we're happy to have men on the panel this evening discussing this very important issue. They're our partners in development. We have Dr. Richard Honigman. He is a pediatrician and a member of the New York State Association for Infant Mental Health. We hear a lot about mental health these days, and that's important. He is the chair of Education and Research Committee for Reach Within, which is a nonprofit organization that transforms childhood trauma into healthy living by advancing trauma-informed caregiving in Grenada and other Caribbean islands. And we also have with us Reverend Tessica Hackshaw, a Vincentian by birth but a Caribbean man at heart. He has served the Methodist Church in varying jurisdictions, including Grenada, where he ministered for several years before taking up duties in Canada. He is now attached to the United Church of Canada, providing pastoral care and administering the Knox United Church. And this evening, while we await Mrs. Glynis Roberts to join us, we'll have to start without her. I am pleased to present our co-host for this evening, Mrs. Judy Marshall. She's no stranger to Beyond the Headlines. She's been with us several times before discussing education and related issues. She's a Grenadian educator who is now a resident in the United States, and she's engaged with the New York City Department of Education. Mrs. Marshall is a peer collaborative teacher in charge of math instructional classes and is the lead for grades 3 to 5. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to hand you over to Mrs. Marshall. And just to confirm that Ms. Roberts has joined us?
Yes.
Yes. Auntie Glynis, it's good to have you. Happy Mother's Day belatedly. Mrs. Marshall, the show is yours tonight. Go right ahead.
Okay, good night, everyone. I'm extremely pleased to be co-hosting with the esteemed Mrs. Odette Campbell and to listen to the views of our distinguished panelists. I'm also willing to take this opportunity to thank our listening and viewing audiences for joining us tonight. I know that you're going to get something very meaningful from tonight's program. So I'd like to begin by unpacking the issues of women's contribution to society. So I'll start off with the last person to come on, Mrs. Roberts, Ms. Glynis Roberts. So when someone says women contribute to society, what exactly does this mean to you? Ms. Glynis Roberts, would you start us off with the conversation?
Yes. Good night to all the panelists. I'm pleased to be a part of this production. Thank you, Odette. And I'm so happy to see Reverend Hackshaw because he was part of my family in Grenada while he was here. I want to start off by saying, without the woman, you don't have a world. Simple. Because we are the ones that, actually bear the children, bring them forth. And in addition, we have several women who, although they would not have given birth to children, but they mother children, especially for me, when I went to St. Joseph's Convent, having been with the sisters of Cluny, like Sister Philomena, Sister Martin, Sister Gabrielle, Sister Maureen, they sort of shaped our lives into what we are today as women. And on the political front, I want to say that to be a woman in politics, and we are made for politics because we have that passion. We can understand, we can multitask, we can do so much things. But I believe the negative side is what keeps us away. But I want to encourage women to join me on that front so that we can continue to do well.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well said. So I'm wondering, Sunity, are you willing to add some of your views to what Glynis just said? Why do you believe motherhood is important, and what roles do mothers play in society?
Oh, mothers shape the generations. They give birth, they bring these young people, these babies into the world, and so much of the platform that you give a child, a human being, comes from the mother. Of course, it also comes from the father, and if you have a nurturing relationship between the parents and the child, then you're partners in that. So it's you don't have a mother without a father, and you don't have a father without a mother. But some parents have to be father as a mother. They have to be the mother who fathered the child or the father who mothered the child. But we know from the evidence that women carry a lot of the responsibility for children. And I put some of this down to the history of the human civilization. There was a time when men were required to go and chase food. I mean, this is even before agriculture took root, where you could actually plant and stay one place. People followed food. And the man went out, the woman, but we've had so much of evolution of roles since then. So one would hope we are partnering more and we are taking more responsibilities. But I do think to a significant degree, mothers take the position that the buck for bringing up a child stops with me.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. And you've kind of segued us into looking at some of the challenges that motherhood brings. And I'd like to get the men's perspective on this. So Dr. Honigman or Reverend Hackshaw, do you have any suggestions for women as they face these challenges of motherhood?
Well, I think that the relationship, as Sunity said, between the mother and the father are very important to establish sharing responsibilities. Obviously, breastfeeding is best for the, infant. So that's a little more difficult to share, but some of the feeding responsibility can be shared, and also in terms of easing the other stressors that the mother may encounter, and the burden, can be adequately shared. And the child needs the input from both the father and the mother. And it's important to grow healthy children. And the parents are the ones that or the aunties or the grandmothers and grandfathers and uncles to help, establish the world view of the infant as things being safe and friendly, and establishing a good balance between, nurturing and other responsibilities.
All right. Yes, indeed. Reverend Hackshaw, would you like to just add anything about the challenges that mothers face and any recommendations for helping a mother that's out there facing a challenge right now?
Yes, I think the intimate connection between a mother and a child begins in the womb when the child is being nurtured there. The mother sings, the mother plays, sometimes the mother talks to the child in the womb. And I think from that point, the connection seemed to be unbreakable. Sometimes the child goes astray. And when the father could walk away and say, "Not me," the mother is always there, waiting and journeying and praying and begging and pleading and providing. And that's the connection that is established between the mother and the child. Now, my encouragement to mothers is that you just cannot give up on praying and supporting and keeping that connection. If you do, you are not only hurting the child, but you're hurting yourself, because you play a big role, sometimes 75-70% of that connection.
I am tempted to say amen.
Yeah.
Well, can I follow up on that for a second?
Sure.
I think that the Reverend is extremely accurate in saying that it begins in the womb. I don't think we as a people appreciate how much of the establishment of the infant's regulatory systems are established in the womb, because the infant is surrounded by the heartbeat of the mother. And if the mother is calm and regulated and there's a nice even pattern, the baby establishes that. If the mother is stressed, all those stress chemicals transfer through the uterus into the infant as it's growing and establish, connections that way to the infant's stress response system. Or if the mother undergoes a lot of changes in the heart rate, it kind of also goes through, and the infant is not accustomed to a nice, slow, even temper. So it's very important that it doesn't start after birth, it starts before birth.
Indeed, very important. I'd like to take us to this question. We have unpacked some of the challenges and the contributions that women make in society. So now let's go back in time for a bit and zero in on women who have made strides and who had broken glass ceilings and barriers in their time. Which one of you on the panel would like to take this question? I can repeat if I spoke a little too fast.
Yes, repeat,
okay.
Please.
All right. So I want us to just go back in time and think about women who have made strides and broken glass ceilings and barriers in their time as it comes to contributions that women and mothers in particular make in society.
Okay. I could start.
Good.
From our perspective in Grenada, I can look at mothers who not only broke ceilings, let's say, in the political sphere, but in the sphere of, let's say, the cottage industry.
All right, so
someone
Ms. Roberts,
would have started a business, and with that little business of teaching to sew, teaching to make jams and jellies, and stuff like that, now you have a big industry going, and I could speak to
Ms. Roberts, we need to take a pause. Let's just take a pause here. Somebody on the panel has a child somewhere playing video games, or there is a cell phone that keeps ringing and it's interrupting. We can't hear what the panelists are saying. So somebody needs to get a child out of the room, and somebody needs to get a cell phone that keeps ringing out of the way. So, Ms. Robertson, you seem to have some issues with your connection. Sunity, can I ask you to look across the region for us and look at some of the most powerful women? If you ask me, the late Dominica Prime Minister Eugenia Charles comes to mind as a trailblazer. If I come to Trinidad, Jean Pear, netball, because I'm a member of the netball fraternity, whether we want to believe it or not. So, Sunity, you want to take us through probably the Caribbean and think of some women who were trailblazers?
You know, I know that there are a lot of women who do that, but I think it is in the essence of women to be trailblazers. And over, when you ask women who have been their role models, they inevitably, most of the time, they say their mother. Because women, and I think it's almost, it's the focus on the headline makers, because, you have we've had the first female prime minister. We had one woman prime minister, and it was a glass ceiling that was broken. We now have the first female president. Barbados has had female governor general. Jamaica had a female prime minister in Portia. And so in politics, you have that. You have women who are breaking the glass ceiling. In business, we still have quite a number of private boards, and I think public boards as well, that the large majority are male. And so we tend to pick out the one or two women that have actually made it onto those things. But I think there is a story inside of that is not as flattering for women. And that story is how many women have had to compromise their own way forward, compromise who they are to reach to those, to really land a space in the men's world. And that the women who want to be all that they can be, that they want to be a mother, they want to be a partner, they want to be active in their community lives. They carry so many responsibilities. And in the workplace, you're told you have to choose the corporate life, or you have to choose this life or the other.
True.
I am inclined to focus on the unsung heroes.
Yes,
who
me too.
Are every day, they are heroes in their own lives. They're heroes in their communities. These are the women who are bringing up children in entire communities that nobody knows their name, and they're not their children. Yes. Right? And they are changing the lives of these little ones, and they look back and they say, were it not for having met this woman who is not even related to me by blood. And so I think I'm not underselling or underestimating the glass ceiling, but for us in the Caribbean, the glass ceiling is very often the teacher, change the life of somebody, the elder in the church who took on a child who could just look and see something about that child there's this problem, I could help. And these are our heroes.
Indeed. Indeed. I'd like to hear the thoughts from Alina Roberts. I know we have two Roberts on the panel tonight. Yes. So Miss Alina Roberts, as an educator, can you identify particularly women from the Caribbean, even women in the diaspora that may have broken a glass ceiling? I know Sunity pointed us to the fact that we have to look at the unsung heroes, but can you think of anybody so that you can share your views on the contributions that mothers make?
All right, pleasant good night to everyone, and happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers out there listening. And I was of the same opinion to the one who just shared, that, sometimes we look at the popular ones, the one who would have made president, the one who would have been prime minister, and we forget to look at the unsung heroes. Every day I see women who persons may not know them because they're not popular, but the struggles that they go through in the upbringing of their children, in my eyes, they way past a prime minister or president. And of course, there are Caribbean female leaders who would have stood out to me. We had Portia, we had persons, even in our very own Grenada, we had like Joan Puss, we have other members of Parliament, female, even our one on the panelists here, Mrs. Roberts. And they would have served as encouragement for women, because in the past, we know that this was a barrier for women. We were only seen as being homekeepers, but being able to break these barriers shows to us that we can move beyond just the home and go to different circles in life.
All right. I am loving this conversation. Now, let's shift a little bit because we know that every issue we address today must be placed within the frame of COVID-19 and how it affects us mentally. Dr. Honigman made some connections to that, and I think Reverend Hackshaw also mentioned about the importance of us taking care of the baby from the womb and forward. So now that we have this COVID-19 and it has affected us mentally, Dr. Honigman, how has the pandemic impacted women and the roles that women play?
Well, I think it's impacted women in many different ways because a lot of times the balance between work and home is disrupted. When the children were isolated and could not go to school, it placed an extra burden on the mother or the female in the house who had to go to work, added extra stress onto the mother in terms of trying to balance both. And the added stress also makes it more difficult to be a good parent because, parenting is a balance between the external stressors and the stress of the child and how to keep your cool to raise a well-regulated child. And that is disrupted with worrying about job and school, and if my children are home, how do I function at work properly, wondering what they're doing at home if there's nobody else there, or financial reasons about missing work, and if the children are adequately supervised. So there's a lot of internal and external stressors on the mother that adds to their stress, and added stress to a parent sometimes inadvertently gets transduced or added on to the child. So there's a ripple effect that also needs to be encountered and taken care of.
Thank you so much for that. I'd like to ask Reverend Hackshaw about the role of women in the church as pillars of support. Can you just speak to that a bit? And we're going to address some of the mental health issues again with Dr. Honigman in a minute.
Okay, so before I'm sorry I didn't say good night to the panelists and to all those lovely people in Grenada and those who are within earshot of my voice, who are listening, who have tuned in. To answer your question, I want to ground it first in the scripture, because there is a sense in which many of us believe that women played very little role in the scripture. But I want to take the Gospel of Luke, for example, and show how Luke, in a way, exposed the role of women in the life of their children and in society. In fact, the entire both narrative in the Gospel of Luke is, and I want to deliberately use this word, is pregnant with women playing significant role in that narrative. And women continue throughout the scripture, even though in some churches it is said that women should not do certain things, but it continues within the church. Today, the backbone of almost every congregation across the denominational line in the church seem to be made up of women. Most of the members of the churches are women. So they are not only giving physical support and psychological support to their children, but it seems as though they are the source of spiritual discipline in their children's life. Women are holding the church together. I manage a church here where I could say that there's a balance between the number of men and women attending worship. But the role that the women organization is playing in this church and the contribution they make, financial and otherwise, in the mission of the church, is something that you cannot measure. Every year I have to, in the annual meeting, say to the women, thank you for your commitment, your support, your love. They just do it. Women are incredible beings, and I hold the highest respect for women.
All right, thank you. Let me just check in with my co-host to see if it's time for a commercial break before I launch the next question.
It is time
Odette,
for a commercial break, but I want to put Sunity Maharaj-Best on notice that when we come back, we're coming to her because I want her to go back to the issue of the pandemic and how it has impacted women, because dealing with she has her own multimedia production company, as we know, and dealing across the multimedia platforms, she engages in these discussions. So I'm putting Sunity Maharaj on notice, and when we come back, we want to go back to her on that subject. And we'll be right back after this commercial break. This is Beyond the Headlines. We're reflecting on Mother's Day, and we're looking at women and development. Do stay with us.
How did you get your electricity bill to be so low? For one, we size our transformers just for what we need, and we unplug transformers, chargers, and other devices when they're not in use. We also replaced our light bulbs with LED. I even replaced the seal on my refrigerator door to keep the cold air in.
How do you know if it is working?
We pay attention to the usage history table. Over time, our average usage has decreased.
Renelec, energizing our Grenada. Total is one of the world's largest oil companies with a top quality line of lubricants. Total Lubricants has a full product line from passenger cars, motorcycle, heavy industrial equipment, mining, trucking, agriculture, and manufacturing machines and vehicles. Total Lubricants, winning championships in motorsports, including Formula One and World Rally Championships. Total Lubricants are available at all Rubis service stations, leading automotive shops, and distributed by Huggins.
A message by the Grenada Distillers Limited.
You want a hand sanitizer to do 3 things: kill germs, be gentle, and to go where you go. You can get all of that in our hand sanitizer. Hard on germs, gentle on hands, affordable. Remember, hand sanitizers contain alcohol. Keep away from heat and flames and avoid contact with eyes. Available at retailers island-wide.
A message by the Grenada Distillers Limited.
How going on, boy?
Hey, good old things.
Hey, Daisy.
Yeah.
Boy, in line, boy. Your house looking a real good day.
Boy, it's thanks to the hard-working and professional staff at the Housing Authority of Grenada. They handled me real nice. They did my plan, they did the construction, and I didn't even have to worry about a thing. They were there with me every step of the way, supervising the job, asking me about my concerns, giving me feedback as the house took shape. They were there from start to finish, and even put the keys in the palm of my hand. I give them an A++ for customer service.
Oh, it's people from housing bad, boy.
Boy, not bad. Excellent. If you're thinking about constructing your home, why not consult the Housing Authority of Grenada? You could visit them right down in the Sandino complex, or give them a call, 440-1015 or 440-1016. Or check out their website, hag473.com. They go handle you. They go jog your blocks, they go draw your plan, they go tote your materials. Hey man, where you going? The Housing Authority of Grenada is your choice for affordable housing and a stress-free construction experience.
Are you
you looking for quality herbs and herbal supplements, or are you thinking about having a complete body cleanse to jumpstart your health? Then no need to look further. Visit Nirvana Natural Health Clinic, Detox Center, and Natural Health Store. We carry a wide range of herbal products for kidney and gallstone cleansing, male sexual enhancement formulas, asthma and sinusitis, gas and bloating, acid reflux, constipation, arthritis, imbalanced hormones, female health issues, liver cleansing, weight loss, and so much more. Also available, colonic irrigation, holistic health consultations, essential oils, and diffusers. Look out for our online natural health store coming soon. Call 231-6642 for 18-7115 or 449-7753 to find out about our delivery options or to book an appointment. Visit us at Belmont St. George's, close to the Fallage, Monday to Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Nirvana Natural Health Clinic. Detox your way to health.
We support you at every stage of your life.
For business,
for your education,
for your financial freedom,
for that new ride.
Upgrade your life with the Communal. Contact us today.
Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. Just in case you joined us late tonight, we're looking at women in development with a reflective on Mother's Day, which was celebrated yesterday. Our panelists this evening are distinguished Caribbean journalist and lecturer Sunity Maharaj-Best, Glynis Roberts, a former parliamentarian in Grenada, Miss Alina Roberts. She's an educator based here in Grenada. Dr. Richard Honigman, he's a pediatrician and a member of the New York State Association of Infant Mental Health, and he works with Reach Within, which is a charitable institution working here in Grenada and several other Caribbean islands. We have Grenadian Vincentian. Yes, we label him Grenadian Vincentian. We've adopted him. Reverend Tessica Hackshaw, he's now ministering in Canada. So we were looking at women and development, some of the challenges that they've been facing, and we know COVID-19 must be placed within that frame. Sunity Maharaj-Best, so you have been looking at those issues through your work in the region, and what are your findings?
Well, we have a massive piece of work in the region to deal not only with the economic recovery that everyone is talking about, that we will have to have a blueprint for economic recovery, but for a recovery of the gains that women have made that have been lost in this period. And I want to focus on the fact that the economic shutdowns, the economic decline and so on, is generally assumed to have hit women the hardest. When shops close, when restaurants close, when hotels close, it is women more than men who are losing their jobs. It is girls whose education, well, everybody now, their education is being affected. But the question is how many of these women and these girls in school are actually going to pick back up their education if they have fallen off in the past year, either because they don't have the equipment, the devices, or they have to stay home and help out with the children. If the mother has been able to keep her job right now, she's depending on the daughter to help out at home. So one of the big problems we have in the Caribbean is statistics. You build government policy on facts. How many, what are the numbers, I can tell you globally, women are said to make up about 39% of the labor force globally. But job losses among women amount to 59%. That is a huge disproportionate burden. So women are carrying, right now, we may even have among us women who are keeping their jobs, playing teacher at home for their children who have to, on the days they can't go to school, looking after the elderly who have to be protected from the risk of infection more so than anybody else. Making sure there's food. What about those who lost? And so many women are working for minimum wage or under minimum wage. They are the disposable element in the society. When the places open back up, will they get their jobs again? Do they have any kind of job insurance? Do they have any of these things? So I think that in addition to whatever plan is made for economic recovery by the individual countries of the Caribbean, we have to think in terms of how do we move to get women to recover the lost ground. Otherwise, we are going to risk a lost generation of women, girls in education, women who were coming out of university planning to get a job. I mean, that's what their grandmothers and mothers did. They made the sacrifice so this child can have the platform to go to university, and you've come out now out of university and there are no jobs for you. What is your future? So we have to think, we have to have a plan that very deliberately focuses on the losses that women would have suffered in the pandemic, and actively, not simply wait for them to get back jobs or to get back in school, but to very deliberately see that as a problem that has to be addressed by the society.
Great. And in case you joined us later, our co-host this evening is Mrs. Judy Marshall. She is a Grenadian educator who is now resident in the United States and is engaged with the New York City Department of Education. Mrs. Marshall is a peer collaborative teacher in charge of math instructional classes and is the lead for grades 3 to 5. Mrs. Marshall is our co-host this evening, and I hand right back over to her. All right. So, Mrs. Marshall, your microphone is muted. Don't forget, unmute.
Oh, I totally forgot. Sorry about that. Now, I'd like to address some of the issues that Sunity just pointed us to, which is the disparity in wages for women, and also the kind of hole we're digging for women and young girls in society. So I'm going to ask Alina to point us to, as an educator yourself, what are some of the ways that we can kind of bridge the gap that is being made now as it comes to young girls and their education and women to kind of pick up the mantle because of the hardness of the hit that we're experiencing due to COVID and the other impact that it has caused? Do you have any recommendations for us?
Well, of course, COVID has indeed created many challenges for us, especially in the education system. I think sometimes we are over-worried about the education of our students, but students are very resilient. And despite the challenges, I believe that they are able to bridge that gap and to still continue with their education. Yet it's not going to be the same, but I believe with continued support that they'll be able to achieve their goals still.
Yes, indeed. It's a big stretch for us now because of the deep roots of how COVID has impacted us, and as Sunity pointed us out to the fact that businesses are closing and women are getting the hardest hit. I know here in North America, women make 81 cents to every dollar a man makes. So I'm sure that the stats in the Caribbean is even more. Is there any way that any one of the panelists could point us to a plan of action that we could take to help our women overcome or survive the impact that COVID and its repercussions are causing?
May I just add here, I think too we have to get a shift in gear because we are accustomed to the traditional way of operating, but COVID has taught us to go beyond and become creative and versatile and tap into technology. So I do believe we can survive. We may not be on the same routes, but we can survive if we change routes, be creative, and still be able to reach where we want to reach.
And I think if I could interject here and ask Dr. Honigman to weigh in on that, because he has been working with Reach Within, and I'm certain these issues have come to the fore as he's worked with these agencies in the U.S. and Grenada and the other islands. So Dr. Honigman, do you want to weigh in on this?
Well, I think for a start, if women have power, women have power at the voting, and who they vote for is important. And if there's candidates that can address the inequalities, they can express their points through, the ballot box and get more representation in government that can address these issues. Also, it's not just economic loss that afflicts women, during this pandemic. There's worldwide statistics about, through quarantining, the increase in domestic violence in which the woman is usually the victim, and how that also affects their children that the women and mothers worry about. So there's other aspects to this other than just financial. There's social, emotional, and developmental. And the organizations and the government, needs to heed these, statistics. There's World Health Organization, there's other studies, showing in the U.S. even that there's been a marked increase in violence. And from what I understand in Grenada, it's, similar, and there's also been an increase in the number of children that have had to be removed from the biological homes and placed in the residential care facilities because of maltreatment and neglect and other issues that can adversely affect mothers and women.
Yes. Mental health issues are indeed threatening our society. There's so much unrest between women because they do have a lot to deal and cope with when it comes to taking care of the children. And then if we look at the stigma that's placed on single mothers and the struggles that they go through to deal with all the societal prejudices and biases that's thrown on at them, do you have any coping mechanism that you could recommend for a single mother, Dr. Honigman?
Well, there are certain things that a single mother can do, because self-care for any adult, a single mother, a single father, a married couple, self-care is very important. And there are certain, you need some time for yourself. You should exercise. You could practice mindfulness or meditation, even belonging, as the Reverend said before, the number of women in the church, having a social support system is very important. Spirituality is very important because that lowers the inflammatory chemicals in your system, so you can better, self-regulate and be calmer. And when you're a calmer parent or a calmer person, you could be a better parent. The other things, take a walk, speak to people online. When they first came out with social distancing, there was a reason for that, but it's kind of a misnomer. You want to have physical distancing, but social closeness. So we have to remember that.
That's very, very important. My students, when you ask them about this remote learning, that's what they have in common. The fact that they miss socializing with their peers and even with their teachers. So you hit the nail right on the head, Dr. Honigman.
Thank you.
If I'm to step in here, one of the things that they have done in Canada, one, to to help women in this time of social distancing, pandemic, crisis, I refer to it as a crisis moment, is that organizations have lobbied the government to pay sick leave so that women who are not feeling well, who are under strain, could stay at home and still receive an income. And just last week, the Ontario government has introduced paid sick leave for workers and for persons who are at home. The other thing I think we are afraid to say is that recently, women have seem to have been more progressive in learning institutions and other places than men. And maybe in some cases, in some families, and I'm not afraid to say this, there may need to be a reversal in the role in the home in order to keep this progress going. And that is, the man may have to step back and say, well, okay, I realize that the woman has a better job than I do. My daughter is performing much better than my son. And focus your resources and energy in the place where you are progressing most. This may be offensive to some people, but I think if we are going to bring about the recovery that we so quickly long for, we may have to look at our advantages and disadvantages and put our resources where they could be best used.
But I am
Go ahead, Odette.
thinking, like, really, Reverend Hackshaw, you're trying to start a revolution?
It's not a revolution, it's reality if we're going to progress.
Reality. Yes, I agree.
If we're going to progress, if we check our universities, especially in the Caribbean and in some of our secondary schools, females in the universities, there are more females than males. When I studied in Jamaica, the females outnumbered the males. In some of our secondary schools, the girls are performing far better than the boys. And I'm not saying that you keep back the boys from performing, but I'm saying if where there are limited resources and we have to make choices, opportunity costs, we would definitely have to focus our resources in the places where we can progress the fastest. I say so without any apology.
I see Mrs. Roberts trying to get in on the discussion here. She seemed to be passionate on that subject. Mrs. Roberts?
Yes, and I'll take it from a personal standpoint. Now,
oh, did we lose her?
Education is important. Hello? Hello?
Could you repeat from the top? We've missed some of it.
Okay, I said education is important, but I can only give my personal story. And I want to give a bit of the story from my angle so that I can encourage those who, because of whatever reason, at the time during school life, was not able to be successful, that successes comes not early in life sometimes, but or we call it late bloomers. Because I am one who's proud to say that someone who have reached the highest institution in the land, I have never done university education. I did not do A-levels. I did not even have English and math at O-levels. However, my passion and my drive and saying that what I learned from the teachers who were on the way, like Miss Pilgrim, Mrs. Dubois, and so during our time at the convent and the nuns, kept me on course to where I am today. There were people who believed in me, even if I did not have education, let's say formal. I have two teachers that I have all respect for, Mr. and Mrs. Lewis and Mr. Lennox Lewis. Because when I went to the institute to start stenography, I did not have the requirements to get into to do stenography. And they gave an entrance exam for the school. And I came first. And they said, what do we do with this child? They said, let's give her a break. And I got a break. I was the best in my class in stenography and typing. However, I was not good at the academics. So there are people who are late bloomers. So I want to say to all mothers out there, and I'm so happy to have been a mother, not with university education, but could have gotten into the parliament, because politics is about compassion and loving people and wanting to see people do well. I grew up for lovely children. I now have 6 grandchildren. I'm the proudest grandma in town. One was interrupting the whole program tonight, so I apologize. However, with all of these, I want to just encourage those who cannot, concentrate on some things now. It's not the end of the world. Parents, do not bash your children. I have witnessed a young woman from St. Vincent who I have to talk about because she does construction. So as teacher Alina was saying, sometimes we have to move away from the mainstream and get into the areas where you like it, but people want to say, girl, don't go there. Follow your dreams, follow your passion. My first daughter have a degree in psychology at UWI. She spent 4 years. And a couple years ago, she came home one day, she said, Glynis, me and like this office work again. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? Where all the money gone? She said, I want to cook like Granny. No, she was working at Spicing as a chef. I'm saying all of that just to encourage women, encourage people out there. And in working at Spicing, we know what happened with COVID. But now she has her talent and she's cooking, I'm delivery girl and I'm so happy because I'm doing my best to keep the job. Because, my daughter could fire me any day now. So I'm just saying all of that to encourage people that, listen, you go down this road and it's not what you think it should be, just keep going. The mere fact that you get another day in life where you can get up and see a bird and see a butterfly and you know what I mean? So let's just live. I want to encourage women out there. Listen, we are great. We cannot do it without the men. I don't want us to feel so. And I want to agree with Reverend Hackshaw. We have our women who are going, so let's focus on them. However, no one is the same. We are all made differently. Okay. So we would not all persons wouldn't grow up their children the same way. I have a lovely relationship with my children. They don't say mommy, they call me Glenn. Glenn, what's going on? You know what I mean? We have a nice rapport. So I want to encourage parents out there, women out there who have contributed immensely towards the development of our nations. And we could go like for Eugenia Child, people in sports, people who would have passed through lives like Margaret Payne. Those people would have charted the course for a lot of people, Yota athlete, Lucy Steele, people would have, championed our young people into being what they are today, and they are not, let's say, parents, people that would have mothered children.
Well,
so that's my 2 pence.
Thank you so much for that. I thank you for your transparency and the fact that you are mentioning that there are so many struggles, but yet there are talents that we can take beyond the academics and use it to better society. Did I hear somebody trying to chime in?
Yes, I just wanted to back up with an example.
Reverend, I have to ask us to take a pause because we must take a commercial break. We have a very important commitment at this hour. So let me ask us to pause. But I see Sunity Maharaj sitting there very composed. But I think Reverend tried to start a revolution that I want Sunity to probably take us back on track, because I feel I will be getting stoned in the road tomorrow because of some comments he makes. Sunity, I think I need you to come back in when we come back to put some kind of leverage on this. So let's take a commercial break and we'll be right back. Is it time for the boys or the men to step up or step back? We'll be back on Beyond the Headlights.
I'm a winner, you are winner, we are winners. It's the big one, Grenada. Imagine
scratching, winning $25,000 and up to 6 times by scratching just one later ticket. Get your triple cash scratch tickets for a chance to live your best life. Win easy with Scratch. For just $3, match any of your numbers to any of the winning numbers and win the prize shown for that number. Reveal a money back symbol and win the prize instantly. Triple cash scratch in stores now. Must be 18 or older to play.
Cause I'm a winner. From the moment that I get up, I'm feeling right.
A pleasant evening to everyone. Welcome to the National Lotteries Authority's Lotto Draw number 3210 for today, Monday, May 10th, 2021. I am Anisha Charles. With me this evening is Ms. Makiba Bain from PKF Accountants and Business Advisors, whose purpose is to ensure that this show is conducted in an accountable manner, that the game balls with industry standards and in no way stamped with. At this time, she will tickets at hand because we are about to play for a jackpot of $42,000. But first, your free ticket letter. Good luck. This evening's free ticket letter is check your tickets. Your free ticket letter for this evening is O as in odd. Let's proceed for 5 winning numbers. Good luck. First of this evening is check your tickets. First number up is 19. Second number. Second number is 12. Third number up. Third number is 23, followed by 17. Fifth and final number. Final number is 24. Let's recap those numbers. Check your tickets. First number up is 19. The second, 12. Third, 23, followed by 17. Fifth and final is 24. So that's 1919, 12, 12, 23, 23, 17, and 24, 24. Your free ticket letter for this evening is O as in odd. Congratulations to all the winners of this evening's Lotto Draw. Lotto, play and win a lot. Already play all the games of the National Lotteries Authority, supports sports, culture, and the nation building. Thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful evening.
By now, you should know that the early bird catches the worm. So, what are you waiting for? Put wings to your feet and head to your nearest scratch seller. For every quick sevens scratch ticket you buy at $2, the NLA gives you 7 chances at winning as much as $7,000. Scratch the entire play area for your 7 chances at revealing as much sevens and win the corresponding prizes. Win easy with Scratch. Must be 18 or older to play.
Get Rubigas. Get cooking. Rubigas, clean, safe, and reliable LPG is the perfect solution for your commercial and everyday needs. For cooking at home or barbecuing, choose Rubigas LPG cylinders. Available in a variety of sizes from 20 to 100-pound cylinders. Rubigas LPG, clean, safe, reliable. Are you cooking with Rubigas?
Get Rubis, get going.
How did you get your electricity bill to be so low? For one, we size our transformers just for what we need, and we unplug transformers, chargers, and other devices when they're not in use. We also replaced our light bulbs with LED. I even replaced the seal on my refrigerator door to keep the cold air in.
How do you know if it is working?
We pay attention to the usage history table. Over time, our average usage has decreased.
Renelec, energizing our Grenada.
Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines, and this evening we're looking at women and development, and we have a revolution started with a reverend, a man of the cloth, saying probably that men need to step back so that girls and women could step forward. Sunity Maharaj, he would like to defend this point, but I would like to hear what is your thought on that. I know our co-host this evening, Mrs. Judy Marshall, will take over, but Sunity, let's hear you on that one.
Well, you should know me well enough to know I'm all for revolution. And I kind of think, who was more revolutionary than Christ in his time? It was the status quo that was against him. Everything that he spoke about was radical. And so I think the point that the Reverend was trying to make is that families have to put aside their biases that inhibit their own progress. And they have to look with common sense at their own family and say, what are the best prospects for us moving forward from one generation to the other, right? And this, when we talk about education, we don't necessarily talk about academic education. We talk about trying to give your child everything to become everything they can become. That is the ideal position. And of course, life inhibits all the things we can become. And when we are stopped in one way, we do like Glynis, and we find another way, right? So that, and education has been the single route to the advancement of Caribbean people in moving from the period of colonialism where we didn't have, when school was not, it wasn't open to us. School is a fairly recent development in the history of the Caribbean. And school for everybody under the age of 11 or so, it's within my lifetime. So education is a critical factor in the progress of families from moving from one level of poverty very often to another level. And I really appreciated Alina's approach in saying that you have to not throw your hands up in the air at the pandemic and the impact on education and think that children will necessarily fall out. What we know about children is that they're extremely imaginative, they're very resilient, they can catch up, but we have to look at the sacrifices that may have to be made by families, the children who will be lost, that who might not have been lost were it not for the pandemic. But Grenada is lucky at this up to now to have been spared the devastation that COVID-19 has visited upon some of the larger countries in the Caribbean. Trinidad right now is in a massive upsurge that, if we are not careful, could take us spiral downwards. We did not expect this. We were very comfortable a couple of months ago. Jamaica is still trying to get out of where they are. And so what we have across the Caribbean, it's a different sets of landscapes. So each one of us knows what our situation is. But when we want to think about the Caribbean as a whole and how we can help each other, we have to look at the broad picture, average out the situation, because ultimately we have regional institutions at the University of the West Indies, and it's not only about going to UWI for a degree, it's about UWI that plans the training of teachers, looking after early childhood education. So there is a regional perspective that we have to bring to each of our individual situations. And it might be different, right? So, but also Glynis tells the story of how Caribbean people find their way forward and the need to give hope. And the church has such a responsibility at this time, because it is the place that so many people, but women in particular, seek out solace, comfort, companionship, advice, hope, community. In addition to everything, and you find it, every religion has their holy books and scriptures that offer hope to people. And it might be at the best of the time, the economy might be doing very well. You might have a bad marriage, and you're coming to church to be able to stand up to that, to go home and survive to another day. So all of these things are really, the story is very complex and multifaceted.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Can I offer a comment?
Yes,
I wanted to back up my
Reverend, hold
point.
On. Dr. Honigman wanted to comment on this, Reverend. We're coming back to you. You started the revolution. Dr. Honigman wanted to get a quick point in, and then we come to you, Reverend.
I think the emphasis on academics may be a little too great in this conversation, because I think more emphasis needs to be placed on understanding and enabling and facilitating good social emotional development starting from early on, and that can help to break cycles of poor outcomes, rather than placing the emphasis on academics. Because if the child has a good social emotional first few years, the academics will come easier for the child, because there will be less instilled fear, threat, danger. And we, even in the States, we fail to appreciate how important early social emotional development is. And children may be seen and not heard, but they do absorb everything that they see. And if we, as men and women, mothers and fathers, can do better establishing a good start for the child, then we may end up with less chronic illnesses that are non-infectious as adults that's plaguing everywhere, between substance, alcohol, social relationship problems, divorce, criminality, and then everybody can prosper more.
Definitely. I'm so glad you mentioned that, Doctor, because now here we're trying to focus on social emotional learning a lot, because we recognize that was a very neglected area. I wouldn't say too much about that, because I know Reverend Hackshaw wants to defend his position on the statement that he said. So we're going to give him that opportunity. And then I'd like for us to shift so that I could hear some insight from Alina about the hindrances that women suffer. So, Reverend?
Yes, thank you very much. And I was, in my point, I was really focusing on the slow rate of development that would take place after the pandemic, and how, as wise families would need to sit down and negotiate and agonize and strategize in order to catch up with what has been lost during the pandemic time. Therefore, it may require in the negotiation that the man stays home and look after the children, so that the wife could go out, who has a better job, and work. Or it may require that the family put their limited resources in a female who is excelling, and encourage the male to get involved in some hands-on job, until it would take families to sit down after this pandemic and negotiate and agonize and strategize in order to come out of this situation. Now, I'm saying this, and I may be talking before time, but one of the things we need to bear in mind is that this pandemic is affecting females more than it is affecting males. If we are to follow the study, we would see that females are experiencing more mental health problems and psychological problems than males, because they are the ones who are confined. They are the ones who have to sacrifice. They are the ones who have to give up most of what they like and they were practicing in order to resort back to the home. And I'm saying this until we find a way to empower females after this pandemic, we are in for trouble. And I'm saying it to Grenada, I'm saying it to the world. We will be in for serious trouble if we don't find a way of empowering females in our world.
I'm so glad you got the opportunity to explain your thinking.
And my example, sorry. I want us to look at, and I don't know how many of us have followed the interview with Kamala Harris when she was elected vice president. Her husband is a professor, a law professor at a university. And he saw that he could empower his wife by giving her the support. And he did it. Look at an outstanding woman. When you talk about breaking glass ceiling, Kamala Harris has broken the glass ceiling in America in politics. not Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, by becoming the first female vice president in the USA.
Thank you for that. I just want to add that there are many homes in which the male are the caretakers, especially in the affluent homes. People that are well educated have already made a decision for the man to be the child rearer because the woman happens to be in a job that makes more money. So that's already happening. And your explanation is well taken. But that's another show that you're going to have to deal with Odette for us to have a more richer conversation about it. But we have been talking about the hindrances and the struggles of women. So I'm going to ask Alina to guide us in this question. In addition to some of the struggles and hindrances mentioned, women are often marginalized in some societies and are deemed a minority group in other regions. So how can women rise above marginalization and other situations? And you guys can pick up where Alina leave off.
All right, great question. And I know sometimes we go through challenges just because we are women. It's not that you are not capable, it's not that you don't have the education, but just because you're a woman. I firmly believe that education would be a key driving force in helping to curb this problem. If society becomes empowered and they know the value and appreciate the value of women, then a lot of the challenges that we face as women will be overcome. Some of the challenges include financial burdens, lack of support from the male figures. Even sometimes, the women look after everybody else except herself. So sometimes that poses emotional stress. But I believe if we are empowered and society gets the picture that, this woman is of great value and we don't want to lose her. As she takes care of others, we want to take care of her, then I believe the problem will be curbed.
Absolutely. Anybody want to piggyback off of Alina's extremely wonderfully stated explanation?
Glynis?
Go ahead, Glynis.
Yes, I want to support what Alina says, but also to add that in a complex society, women can be women's greatest enemies as well. Because women sometimes see each other rather than peers, see you as a competitor. So they don't offer that support that you should have. And if you do not have that tenacity to hold firm to what you believe, you can crumble. So, and sometimes for women, your best friend is a man. Believe you me. So it's just the dynamics of the human being. Men versus women, or however we feel, because everybody's circumstances sometimes differ. Because for me in politics, I got more support from men at a certain level, but women, like again, the soldiers in the army, the soldiers in the party, the ladies, the ones that work with you all the time. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. We have a Mother's Day event and it's the women working hard. Equally, you have men helping, but, so you have different facets where you have, women being supportive and men being supportive, depending on the level that you're at. So, for me, as I said, no man is an island, no man stands alone. People sometimes do not understand your motives and the reason why you do things, so you would not get their support. If you explain further, sometimes people misinterpret. So I am happy Reverend explained his position, because I agreed with it, Reverend. I wasn't an anti to your revolution. I believe we need to support each child, woman or man, in the direction that they should go to make that change. And that change will start. And that change starts with you, and starts with you to make that difference in the community that you live, and then it will transcend into the nations that we build.
Absolutely. And yes, I'm glad that the Reverend had an opportunity to talk about the fact that families have to sit together and strategize so that they can make a wise decision as to how the limited resources that they have are spent. So we gave him that opportunity, and it's good that he's straightened out that point, so we would not have a rebel among us and among our listeners tonight.
I think that what the Reverend and Glynis are really trying to say is that we have to try to abandon our implicit biases against roles that traditionally we've established for gender, and try to abandon that. That may be difficult, but I think if we try not to have our implicit gender biases, things would go easier. Like, it's not a man's role, it's not a woman's role, it's a person's role.
Amen.
Agree. Amen.
Amen, indeed. Thank you for that, Doctor. Thank you for adding that, Dr. Honigman. Now, so we have women that, based on how they are marginalized, they don't feel that they have anything to contribute to society. So to that young woman that may be feeling lost and uncertain about how they can positively contribute to society, what would you say to them? Who wants to take that challenge? I haven't heard.
There is an American journalist who once said, "Follow your bliss." And in following your bliss, you need to overcome obstacles and press on. And I'll say to women, where your passion leads you, follow. Find joy and follow. Don't let anyone or any obstacle prevent you from fulfilling your dreams. Go after your mission. I mean, I grew up in a home where my mother was very determined that she would never allow any man to dominate her, because she had a dream. She had a dream for her children. She had a dream for herself. She had a dream even for her mother. And we are benefiting today because of some of the stands that my mother took in society, in the family, in the home, in institution, even in the schools. We have benefited. I'm the first minister from my community. And when I made the stance to give up economics, studying economics, to become a minister of the gospel, I was teased, I was mocked. I was a cricketer, and my friends turned against me. And she was there encouraging, follow your bliss. And I want to say this to the females, follow your bliss. Obstacles will come, press on. One day, the joy will be yours.
Thank you, Reverend. Anybody wants to add to that wonderful piece of advice that we just got? Follow your bliss. I love that. I'm sharing that with my students tomorrow.
Follow your passion.
I want to say that the principle is we do not make ourselves more by making ourselves less to satisfy somebody who feels threatened by us.
True.
You don't go down to less. You bring them up if you can. And some people might resist that. But you have to stand. What are you going to do? Clip your wings and you don't fly because somebody is objecting to the fact that they don't want to fly. It's not that they can't. So I think the principle of encouraging each other, I want to go back to this point about that woman you asked about, the person who feels hopeless. And also to tie it in with Glynis's point about that sometimes women could be the worst enemy of women. And I want to say that that is a particular phase in the progress of women as they move from being totally outside of the corridors of power. And as change happens, the first women are always the targets. And the first women have to triumph. And they have to be the ones who say, I will not let my wings be clipped. And sometimes they have to make alliances. But it is not necessarily because other women are so they can be made dangerous, but it comes out of a threat. Marginalized people huddle together because what they have in common is being marginalized. And when one starts to move out of the group, the centers of power try to bring that person down by turning to the rest of the group and encouraging them to bring down that person. So what you're dealing with is a culture. But as more and more women move out, what you start to get is what Kamala Harris got, which is you get this solidarity and backing of other women. It is women that took her into the White House in a huge number. But there was a time when the pioneers are always mocked, That is what makes pioneers so powerful, because you have to try, because you are breaking, you're breaking that glass ceiling. And people are telling you, don't go to the glass ceiling. You will break it and it will cut you and it will kill you. So don't go. And of course, sometimes the people who instill fear in us are the people who love us the most, because they are afraid that you are putting yourself out and you're going to get the slings and the bows. They want to spare you that. So they said, God, don't do it now. Don't do it now. And women have the additional problem that when they get into politics and they get on that platform, the culture brings out all their private lives and all their business and also lies about them, right? The first thing they do is to shame women about boyfriends and this and that and all kinds of nonsense that's irrelevant to policies. So I think this is a phase, and I think that the more we can find communities of support and encourage women to believe it can happen, then the lack of trust that encourages them to undermine you, that is going to go. So that is today's children, girls, teenagers, you're trying to spare them that future.
Yes, indeed. And, I feel inclined to say that our roles as mother include, and as it mandates, that we teach our kids self-efficacy so that their self-confidence would never be threatened enough for them to feel that they have to go with the status quo, that they have to follow the crowd, feel marginalized because they have something valuable to contribute to society. So it's important for us to let our girls in particular know that they are strong and they can be resilient. Sometimes we get into the syndrome of the self-inflicted belief that we can't do anything or we can't amount to anything. So we need to really point our kids into the fact that obstacles are there to be overcome. And when they meet a hurdle, don't bow down to the hurdle, step over it and be great. So anybody wants to add? Thank you, Sunity, for that insight also.
Yes, I would like to add and endorse all that was said before, but to add that for me, I gained a lot of strength during my youth and even adult life, listening to music and music that are meaningful, especially the Bob Marleys, the Peter Tosh, the culture. When you listen to them, they say to you, lay your burden by the riverside, sit under a tree, listen to the bird chirp. And I tell you, all the problems that you think you have, you really do not have. And if you place solace in the fact that Christ said the most important part of the scripture is to love him. And the next one that's most important is to love your neighbor as yourself. And consider that if you're driving an Audi Judy, or you're driving a Hummer Alina, or Reverend, you're driving a Mercedes, or Doc, you driving a whatever
Maserati.
Maserati, I can't pronounce the name. If your neighbor says, can I have the Maserati, you can say, here's the key. Because then we know we are here truly as loving each other as the Lord says we should. And I think once we establish that fact, and I believe COVID came for a lot of reasons more than one. It has stopped us in this world so that we can reflect on where we are, reflect on where we need to go. Because half the time now, we can't even socialize, so we have so many shoes we can't wear. When you go to put one in now, it's just walking apart from your foot. So it means that all of this is really not necessary, but it's a relation that we have with human beings. How can we help up someone rather than push down someone? There are a lot of things I want to advise young people to. You can walk away from a lot of situations and walk away not with hostility, but with respect. And another thing I want to say is that we have to understand that we are different and we need to respect each other's opinion as well as the choices we make.
Indeed.
All right. Indeed. And I think the clock is showing that we are at 10 o'clock. Madam co-host, do you want to just do a quick 30 seconds wrap up because it's on the nose?
Yes, I was just about to ask everybody to talk about an influential woman in their life, but I think we're just going to ask for 30 seconds of advice or parting words that you'd like to leave with all of the women out there.
And it could only be 10 seconds. It could only be 10 seconds or 5 because we had
because we
time.
Okay, so very quickly.
All right, so Dr. Honigman, let's start with you and we go through the circle.
I'd like to thank everybody for having me on, and I'd like to thank all the women because without women, then none of us would be here. And it was a very enjoyable, interesting evening. Thank you.
Reverend Hackshaw, who was leading the revolution? 5 seconds?
Yes, I want to greet the people in Grenada and also to say to our young ladies and to the females, or in general, don't allow stress to take over during this time of the pandemic. Look for ways to empower yourself. Get involved in programs, online programs. Liberate yourself. Find ways to be happy. Do not let stress take over, because later on, you would suffer for it. I pray that you would find a place of solace, something to do that will liberate you.
All right, Alina, closing thoughts.
All righty, so my closing thoughts are in the form of a poem. Dear Mother, place your chin towards your chest and push your baby out. At maternity ward, mothers put to the test. Labor pain at its best. But the pain is soon gone away when a precious gem in a comfy blanket lay. Dear mother loves that baby like no other. She feeds, nurtures, loves and cares, overcoming all obstacles and fears. She's gone past the traditional role of homekeeper. She's mother, the all-purpose keeper. She shines at home and at work too. Whatever the career, you'll find her loyal and true. Engineer, pilot, educator, at church, politics, or in the media. Mother dear can handle any career. Female champion, stalwart, shining star. I can't imagine the world without her. I see little children cry for their mother and big men bawl for their mamas. The love of a mother has a different note, whether she's near or remote. Her role as caregiver, teacher, leader, home manager, worker, counselor, comforter, and more. No wonder how deeply the love grows. Make your guess and make it good. The best food is motherhood. She knows that 4% is not enough, so she gives more than 100% of her love. Dear mother, our precious gift from above. Thank you.
Sunity Maharaj, we're giving you the closing words this evening.
No, mine is I am going to just say, like Glynis, I turn to Bob Marley, and I would just advise anybody who's under stress, turn on Three Little Birds and hear him sing, everything's going to be all right.
Every little thing is going to be all right. I'd like to say thanks to our panelists this evening, Miss Sunity Maharaj. She is the Managing Director of the Lloyd-Best Institute, and she owns her own multimedia production company in Trinidad and Tobago. Miss Glynis Roberts, a former parliamentarian, the first female political leader of a party in Grenada, first female in Grenada. Alina Roberts, she's a Grenadian educator. Dr. Richard Honigman, a pediatrician, a member of the New York State Association for Infant Mental Health, and he works with Reach Within, which is a charitable institution which reaches out to Grenada and other Caribbean islands. Reverend Tessica Hackshaw, he is a member of the clergy, Vincentian by birth, Grenadian by adoption. He served there for several years before migrating to Canada. And our very wonderful co-host this evening, Mrs. Judy Marshall. She is Grenadian. She is now residing in the United States, and she is engaged with the New York City Department of Education. Mrs. Marshall is a peer collaborative teacher in charge of math instructional classes and is the lead for grades 3 to 5. Mrs. Marshall and company, to all of our panelists, we say thank you so much to all the wonderful people who work beyond and behind the scenes to make tonight's program the enriching experience that it has been. I'm Odette Campbell saying thank you so much, and we'll see you again next week.